Today, I just want to go over some things with you. I know it's trying times for all of us, and I'm very proud to be a member of public schools today. Public schools serve so many purposes. When you look across the spectrum of what we're dealing with the COVID virus, and let me go ahead and give a disclaimer. I really don't care what political affiliation you are. I don't care what you feel about masks or you don't feel about masks, okay? We are simply doing the governor's executive orders, and we are listening to experts and the science of what we need to do to keep our kids and staff safe. And I say that with a word of safe. What is safe? Well, folks, there's no such thing. This man back here, if you think there's a safety, you better talk to him, because if you don't have your heart right with the Lord, there is no safe place. And if you've listened to Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, they say COVID may never go away, and that the vaccine may be 50% successful. So if we're waiting to open up schools at a point of safety, we'd never open up the schoolhouse again, okay? And so somewhere along the way with fighting COVID, it become highly politicalized. The political hacks took over the whole process, and I'll talk a little more about that as we move forward with this. But in public schools, we're all things to all people. And we understand that there are people in our society that feels like COVID is the same as catching cancer with 100% mortality rate. And that is reality to those people, okay? And then on the far other end of the extreme, there are people who feel like that COVID is a hoax, okay? And so we're not living in either one of those extremes, okay? And so let's walk back to March, and we'll kind of walk through the timelines of where public schools were. I'll talk to you about the things that we've done, and we'll talk to you about the success or the successes that we've had and the challenges that we face as we move forward with that. But I think in February, I really felt like that probably being the school superintendent was one of the probably 3 most unfavorable careers that anybody could endeavor in. And I think after that, the good Lord has showed me that we might have moved up a few rungs on that. Because really and truly, schools are in a no-win situation. And if you have tortured yourself enough to open up Facebook, or if you have tortured yourself enough to watch the evening news, you can see the polarization that we face in society. So in March, when this thing started, we began to try to figure out exactly what we were dealing with. And at that point, we were somewhat blindfolded, and we didn't know. And so as the virus began to evolve, the next major signpost in this thing is May. And that's when the governor gave the executive order to shut public schools down. And at that point, we were no longer independent school districts. We were property and commandeered on behalf of the state of Texas. And so at that point, we had no legal right to open up schools. We're forbidden to do so. But along the way, there is a lot of success. What we are dealing with, I've said repeatedly, that tough times don't last. Tough people do. And I'm very proud to be a member of public schools, because I've seen what my colleagues have done over that time. You're talking about, and Henry gets a lot of the credit. Henry was on the school board when I came to Livingston, and that school board bought into a vision of being digitally progressive with what we were trying to do for kids. We started revamping our infrastructure. we spent a lot of money training our teachers and our students and our parents on the Google aspect of home learning and blending what was going on in the classroom with what was going on at home, and looking at our network and trying to increase that so that we would have the capacity to meet our vision. And if that hadn't happened, Henry, I'm not really sure where we would be today, because public schools was asked to pivot and do something that no other profession had ever been asked to do before and change so rapidly. And that was that we would remote learn. And so when that happened, because of the training and the things that had gone on, and folks, let's say Livingston ISD is a mid-sized school district in the state of Texas. Okay, there are a lot of school districts, and we're not the same. There's 1,024 public schools in the state of Texas that exercise an ad valorem tax, and none of us are the same. However, when you're looking at mid-sized school districts, you're looking at 4,000 kids, 10 to 12,000 parents, staff members of 600. I think we're the second largest employer in Polk County. You know that in our county, 14% of our county has a bachelor's degree or higher, and public school teachers make up a large part of that subpopulation in Polk County. But there are school districts that are small enough that you can throw some workbooks in the bed of a pickup truck and drive the houses and distribute educational resources. With 4,000 kids, that's impossible, okay? And so that's why I give kudos to Henry and those boards at the time that invested, that allowed us to be able to pivot and service our kids the best way that we possibly could. Now, I'm proud of the effort, but I'm also very concerned about the effort. And when I talk about what is the purpose of public schools, well, in the news you see readily that we have an unemployment rate that is unacceptable. We went from a 3% unemployment rate in our nation to double digits. And a large part of that is when kids are home, you can't leave 8 and 10-year-old kids and go to work. Somebody has to be there to caregive for those children. And so one of our purposes in public schools is to educate kids while parents work. Okay? The other purpose of public schools is to educate kids, period. There is an academic purpose that lies behind public schools. And the one that I'm the most proud of today is one that you don't see on accountability ratings. You don't hear a lot of politicians talk about it, but that's the social and emotional impact that we have on students in our community. And I think that if we see nothing else of COVID and what's happened, I think that when we back up and really reflect on it, that may be the greatest success that we have in public school, is we save lives because we fill a big void with the social and emotional health and well-being of our kids.
Amen.
We feed them twice a day for free. When we look at the statistics coming from CDC, we know that from 14 to 18, 1 out of 4 of those kids throughout the course of March until now has thought about committing suicide. We like each other whether we want to admit it or not. Whether we treat each other very good on Facebook or not, we still like each other as human beings. And we need human interaction. We need adults in children's lives that love them, that actively engage and care about them and make them feel loved, wanted, and inspired to be the best version of themselves that they can possibly be as they grow up and go out into the world. We know that there's child abuse, neglect, sex trafficking, and all of those data points are off the charts when public schools were closed. Okay? So from May, you saw the Texas Education Agency do what it had never done before, and that is to be supportive of public schools. We got a tremendous amount of guidance. We got a tremendous amount of help from the Texas Education Agency up until about the time that everybody graduated. And then that's when the political hacks took over, and we're supposed to get health guidance to how to start this school year. And for 3 weeks, we were delayed on health guidance. Why? Because this group wanted this in it, this group wanted this in it. And folks, there's 1,024 of us, and we're all different. The right thing to do was to turn it back over to the duly elected trustees on the local level to make decisions for the local school districts who people had accountability at the ballot box. You don't like your school board? Go vote against them. You think they do a good job? Go vote for them. But that didn't happen. The agency continued to take control over public schools and issue guidance and more guidance until we come to the point that we realize that Atlanta Hidalgo don't want to open schools, folks. It's not going to happen. That's not where her and their area is going. But in Polk County, as we did our parent surveys, the one thing that we knew is our parents wanted our doors open. We wanted kids back in school. We believe as a community in adults in front of children learning. Overwhelming. Somewhere around 80% of our surveys said our parents wanted our kids in school. And the other 20% were made up of people who either students had legitimate health reasons that they did not need to be in school. And there is that. And then there are those who feel like the virus is cancer with a 100% mortality rate. So both of those groups are staying out there. The good things the state did do is that it allowed us to have an alternative between being able to stand back up what we hope is going to be a better online platform and an on-campus, in-person platform. Okay? So parents were given a choice as to which path that we went. Which path did you want to go with your child? And we sent out 7 emails from me. We sent out 7 phone calls from me. We stood up information on our social media to where the true devil's den of our society, Facebook, is for all to see. We stood up information on our website so that folks could have information to make good choices about what is school going to look like for our students and moving forward. And then I didn't get 2 mad parents last night that didn't read any of my emails. What I'm telling you is that the cussings that I'm taking from those parents are problematic, folks, because today in the public school system and the current status of where we are, parents and schools have to communicate, and we have to communicate more so than ever. And we have to be engaged with each other. It is crucial that phone numbers and email addresses is updated, and we are actively going back and forth with each other. So, the other thing the state of Texas did do is it provided guidance on July the 7th, and it continued to change that guidance 4 times between July the 7th and July the 28th, which wound up causing a week delay in us opening schools. Because part of that guidance was a requirement that we had to post what our reopening of school plan was 1 week before the start of school. And then they changed the guidance within our window, which you can't. So we had to revisit our plan, adjust our plan, restand that plan up, and push school back for 1 week. So We, in building that plan, the Board of Trustees allowed me to contract with the Texas Association of School Boards, who were instrumental in pulling in experts to give expert guidance on what schools should look like in moving forward with our implementation of reopening. So you had engineers, electrical engineers, you had virologists, you had epidemiologists, you had facility people, you had very much a variety of think tank people that poured their resources into looking at school districts, figuring out who you are, what you're trying to accomplish, and developing a plan from that. And I'm very proud of that plan. It's you can look on the LivingstonISD.com website, and it's called Planning Forward. It's fairly detailed in there about how we handle a lot of things and do a lot of things, and a lot of things that have changed. Some of those things that are changing and have changed, and then I'll go through, is social distancing. Because of Lines Online, we have about 947 students sitting on Lines Online. So if Livingston ISD ceased to exist and all was left is Lines Online, we'd still be the second biggest school district in Polk County. So that we have a lot of students online that we're trying to improve each day and meet the needs of in a lesser effective model. Because folks, you can say what you want to, but online learning is not as effective as you and I sitting face to face. And it never will be, in my opinion. But we're trying to do the best job with that we can. So those students being removed from the population and looking at our CAD drawings allowed us to look at what is the maximum space that we can get with each load in each classroom to be socially distanced as much as possible. The answer is, in most, or the average is 5 feet. But there are some with 8 feet. Okay, so it varies in that. So when we look at social distancing, the other thing is face coverings and plexiglass. Today there'll be an email going to parents from me, so you're hearing it before parents are. So please don't put it on social media until I can get the letter out to people, and I start getting phone calls. Just give me a chance. That we are changing what we're doing, and every student at L.I.S.D. is going to wear a face mask in pre-K through 12th grade, and I'll tell you a little bit more about why. Henry, kind of watch my time there. I don't want to run out, but so we're making those changes as far as face masks. We do require face masks. In 10-year-old and up, it's required under the governor's order. And point blank, we've been very successful. We've been very successful from the same reason I was so proud of our community at graduation. Because the guidelines that we had in place, everybody knew that we were fortunate to have an in-person graduation. And folks, we're very fortunate to have in-person school going on today. And so our kids, the first morning of school, I'm at Pine Ridge, and we had 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds jumping out of their Tahoes and pickup trucks and sedans, and they had on face masks, wearing them like I wear gloves. And so those parents had invested time to get those kids comfortable with those face masks in order to be able to wear them into our school. And so I was very, very appreciative of that. Plexiglass, we don't have plexiglass anywhere except where parents walk into the buildings. And there's a reason for that. As parents or someone walks into our receptionist area, we have plexiglass. Our classrooms do not have isolation chambers of plexiglass to where kids can't touch any other kids or anything like that. Number one, because you increase surface space. When you increase surface space, you create a place for the virus to land. Number two, it hampers ventilation. And so we know with the virus and aerosoling of our breath is the #1 area that the transmission occurs. And so we don't want anything to impede the turnover rate of air in classrooms. We invested in air scrubbers. The board has basically 90% of our air conditioners in our district are new. And so the board in the return air vent put UV lights in there. That UV light kills bacteria, mold, viruses, and then we have looked at all the turnover rate of air in our facilities to ensure that there is a minimum of 1,000 parts per million turnover rate of air in each one of those classrooms, because ventilation is what lowers the risk level of that virus. Aside from that, kids have hand wash breaks, just like we used to have juice breaks. They have hand wash breaks in schools now. Any ingress or egress of our facilities, there are germicides there to kill virus. Classrooms each have either wash stations with soap, which is the best protection against the virus, or germicide, which is in classrooms that do not have sinks in them. The cleaning protocols are stood up on our website that you can look at. We have purchased viral overlays that are 30-day viral overlays for doorknobs and high traffic areas that will kill viruses for up to 30 days as viruses land on them. Of course, you know we've been very successful with the air fogger system that we have, that we fog rooms, that has kept our doors open when some of our neighboring school districts had to shut their doors because of the flu. We utilize that and believe in those things extremely well. Our principals, and we listen to our parents. Our parents did not want our kids to come back and be imprisoned. Now they feel like they're imprisoned anyway, okay? But what I'm saying is, from the parents' perspective, they wanted recess, they wanted PE, okay? They wanted their kids to go to lunch. They did not want kids to get into a box and stay in there all day, okay? Like they're in timeout. And so we arranged our day to where that doesn't happen. Kids do go to recess, they do go to PE, they do eat lunch, but it is highly structured. And we have cohorting of our schools to where if there is an outbreak of the virus, that we may lose this table, but the rest of the class continues to come to school. When a student is quarantined, they're moved over to the lines online until they work themselves back through a 3-step progress in order to get back into our buildings. Aside from that, I'm not going to go into the response plan per se, but I will tell you this. The thing that we're having trouble with right now is everybody being responsible, sadly, because all of our health affects each other, okay? And so you say, how many cases of COVID have you had in the district? 6 cases. We've got 6 students right now that's under COVID protocols. Oh my God, we need to shut school down. We're not shutting school down, okay? That's not an option. We're going to keep the doors open because of our plan. Our protocols are effective. We believe in our protocols. And where do we get these protocols? Well, we got them from experts. University Interscholastic League, Coach Vanover and his colleagues had 65,000 kids throughout summer workouts. 238 of those had COVID. Only 4 of those 238 were school spread COVID. Community spread is our biggest problem right now. So let's talk about those 6 students that have COVID without breaking any federal laws. Okay, We don't break any laws today. 4 of those 6 students contracted COVID, was tested positive for COVID before school started. Okay? So they never came into our facility. So now we're down to 2. 2 of those students are from the same household. Okay? They were symptomatic, according to the health department, 2 days before school started. Our protocols say that every student, every employee self-checks themselves for the symptoms every morning. Okay? Well, that didn't happen here. Okay? And so a parent sent their students to school for 2 days symptomatic. Okay? And I'm not going to get into the symptoms and violate anybody's HIPAA or anything like that, but that's the issues that we have. We have issues with birthday parties. We have issues with pasture parties. We have issues with gatherings that's going on in our community that's spilling over into our school. We don't have school spread, but we do have community spread, and we are fighting extremely hard to ensure that our protocols are in place. We want our protocols so strong that if somebody walks in testing positive for COVID, that it doesn't spread. Okay? But at the same time, we're trying to educate and prevent folks from sending sick kids to school and sick employees from coming to school. Don't do it. But it continues to be a problem. And even in the case, we had a parent send a child to school with 103 fever. Okay, well, that's one of the symptoms. Kids shouldn't have come to school. Mom had a fever too. Okay, now that kid tested positive for strep, but at the same time, out of the safety of everyone, if mom would have took kid to the doctor to begin with, tested positive for strep, well, okay, we're all good. But now, kid comes to school, tests positive for strep. It doesn't matter if it's COVID or the flu or strep or whatever. The protocols are pretty good to lower the risk levels of all flus, all viruses and all bacteria. Okay, and the last thing that's really hard for folks is that we do have closed campuses now. Okay, so, you know, a lot of kindergarten moms like to come eat, they like to bring Happy Meals to school to eat with their babies. Okay, and so those things are cut out for now. We have closed campuses. You know, you can't come in without an educational purpose into our campuses and interact with students or interact with staff. So the best I can tell you is it's been a long, hard ride with the whole thing. But as I've also told you is, unless there's something that I just can't foresee, we believe in our protocols, we believe in what we're doing, we believe in the implementation, as long as we're all in a team together, that we have no intentions of shutting school down. Okay? We're going to continue. So that student that came in to give you a highlight, working with the health department on one campus, the child wore a face mask. So guess how many people is quarantined on that campus? 1. So on another campus, because of age, there were 10 kids in the class. Guess how many kids is quarantined because of that positive close exposure contact? 9. Because there was one young man that went against the odds. He put the face mask on, his parents put the face mask on him, and therefore he didn't meet the close contact definition. And that little buddy's in school this morning. So whatever your opinion is of face mask, you know, I've said it, there was nobody that was any more against the face mask than I was. But if it means coach being able to play football on Friday, or I'm going to read you something real quick here, that when we talk about the social and emotional learning of students, I got this email from this parent, and it's short, but she said, I want to say thank you to all of you working so diligently to provide this information for our children and their return back to school. My daughter couldn't be happier to hear that she will be returning to school. Being wheelchair bound creates hardships, mentally and physically. She has suffered tremendous depression, loneliness, anxiety, all the while awaiting the news of returning to school, as she misses socializing with her friends, her aide, other staff, and school members of your school district. Thank you so much for continuing to monitor and update and provide our children with a safe return to school. Thank you. That's why it's important to keep our doors open. That's why it's important. It's going to be heck, folks. It's going to be a lot of work on each and every person involved, but that young lady deserves to come into her wheelchair every morning through our doors. That's why it's important to open up public schools. So, with that, what questions do you have? Yes, sir.
Red, you touched on one of them about the impact of the remote education. And of course, I am very, very much, I guess because of my age, anti-online, homeschool, blah, blah, blah. But have you seen any statistics about the effect of these students that are educated remotely, and what happens to them when they get ready to go to college and they're thrust into an entirely different environment with all this? But you mentioned about the girl in the wheelchair, and it bothers me about the self-discipline aspect of homeschooling and online studying. And there's something about taking a kid out of an atmosphere where you've got 25 or 30 students, the bell rings, you sit down, and you go to school for 50 minutes or whatever. And where are we going with all this?
Well, we're probably going into a bad direction. And the reason I say it is, I think some of my colleagues in the education has been duped into going down a bad road. And I say that from the standpoint of, where's my kid at? You know, I got a kid too. And well, I mean, I've got 3 kids, but 2 of them's in university, so that's somebody else's problem. But where is my kid at? She's in school. She's on the campus where there was a positive test of COVID. And I have no qualms with sending her into that school district. I never had a thought about putting her online. As much as Hallie would have probably liked to have been online, that was never an option. Because that, number one, is the most effective education that we can give our kids. And you're exactly right. From a data standpoint, what can I tell you? Here's the only thing I can tell you. The only data piece that I've seen is this. Texas Education Agency released data that they put into some type of statistical model that showed that kids over the last spring of this COVID and online learning, the socioeconomically disadvantaged kids was 55% under their affluent peers. See, the big impact in online learning comes from poor kids. Rich kids, hey, hire a tutor. I can hire somebody to come and sit and tutor you and work with you on your online learning. Poor kids can't afford to do that. So you're seeing a gap between poor kids and rich kids get exponentially bigger. So personally, I'm committed to getting all the lions back in the jungle as quick as we possibly can. I think that every day that we don't is a day that you see gaps, opportunity gaps between classes of kids grow exponentially to a point that, being a former school teacher, you know when a kid gets 1 year behind, an effective teacher takes 3 years for that student to catch back up. That's what the research said. So there is a tremendous educational crisis that is being masked by this health crisis. That if things don't change and kids get back in school and get back to doing business, you're going to see a generation of educational crisis that is going to take a long time if it's ever fixed. What else?
Absences, is the policy the same? They were doing the flex program.
So,
Is that out the window now?
There's no change in the attendance policy, okay? Because the state law says you have to be in attendance for 90% of the school year in order to get credit or to be promoted, okay? The change comes in from where if you're tested positive, tomorrow, you're home, I flop you over to an online learning, and you're still counted in attendance.
Okay.
So you're not absent.
So the regular.
Right, so COVID does not impact attendance. Once you're tested positive or once you're exposed, you get quarantined, I move you over, you're an online learner, the next day you're counted in attendance as long as you log on to that computer and you make adequate progress according to the teacher of record.
You mentioned the TEA.
Uh-huh. They're at home right now, they're not working in their office, but yes.
Are they appointed or are they elected?
The commissioner is appointed, the others are hired by the commissioner.
And the governor appoints the
The
commissioner?
governor appoints the commissioner. Correct. What else?
Is there any foreseen changes to the re-registration process every year so that it's not utter chaos?
Absolutely not. The utter chaos was caused by a software change by Region 20. Region 20 does our student information software, and they changed over the summer. And when they changed, when they did that change from parent portal to Ascender, what happened was they didn't quality control it. Why didn't they quality control it? Because guess where all the people who work at the service center is? They're sitting up at home. And so we don't have a bad process on the local end, but on the state end, they've got to quality control and shoot all the bugs out of it so that we've got something that is functional. So.
HISD talks about they've lost 100,000 students somewhere in the process.
Thank God for those kids, wherever they're at.
I agree, but my question is, have we lost track of students between March and now that that may be missing somewhere?
We've had kids move out of our district, but we're 3,700, and of course, it takes some time because, we do have kids that are migrant, and some of our kids don't show back up till after Labor Day. And so, our numbers are continuing to rise. Have we lost any kids? No. Have kids moved out of our district? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Other thing that's in the news a lot of times that you're seeing right now too is the Texas Education Agency is not tracking these COVID cases.
Why not?
Why would they? Isn't that an educational entity? Isn't their main purpose education? What about the Department of Health and Human Services? Those are the people who are tracking it. So you're seeing some politics played with that. Well, the agency's not tracking these absences. These COVID cases. The health department is. They work together, okay? We're having to work together with the health department right now. Whenever we have a definition of close contact, we work with the health department and the school legal counsel to determine is that actually close contact. So yeah, that's a misnomer that's out there. What else, y'all? Thanks, y'all.